Hi everyone! Welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. We are headed into September, which means fall is not far behind. So we are back to the books and back to our hooks. And today I wanted to make a video that addresses a whole bunch of questions surrounding the magic circle, the magic ring, what I call the cinch circle. This is probably the largest category of question that we've received over the last 12 years here of doing the show. So today I'm going to talk about the magic ring, I'm going to demonstrate the magic ring, but more importantly, I've got 3 very handy substitutions that you can use instead of the cinch circle in case you want to try something different, you don't like the cinch circle, you have problems with it. I'm going to go through the pros and cons of every single method, and that's what we're going to do today. The cinch circle, as I call it, also known as the magic circle or the magic ring, the adjustable loop, the sliding ring, the sliding circle, the adjustable circle, you get the idea. It has many names, and if you are new to crochet or new to consuming different kinds of crochet media, you may have encountered different names for what is essentially the same thing. A lot of books, magazines that span different eras or are translated in from different languages will have a different phrase for this, but it's all the same thing. We cross our yarn to make a circular shape. We insert our hook from the front to the back through that center. We grab the yarn, pull up a loop on our hook, and chain 1 to secure that circle. This gives us a little short tail. We work all of our stitches over top of that short tail, whether they are single crochets or double crochets or half double crochets. We cinch up that little circle by pulling on the short tail that runs underneath all those stitches, and that's how you get a nice tight center to start circular work. We will use this technique to begin granny squares or doilies or hats or anything that is round, circular, or built in a circular format. So it doesn't have to be a circle, because obviously a granny square isn't a circle. You can work corners in, but that's more to do with your stitches. It's just that center, that very start point that we are concerned with when we make a magic circle or a cinch circle. And some people have trouble with it, which is probably why I get so many questions about it. First of all, the name can confuse people. Yes, we're referring to the same technique when you hear all those different names. And yes, it can be problematic for some people. So you're trying to hold crossed yarn, you're trying to like put your hook through it and chain at the same time. Depending on how you hold your yarn and your hook, the cinch circle can be a pain in the neck for you. Now, I have a video, I'll link it in the description box down below, in which we create a cinch circle laying flat on a surface. So you don't have to hold it. You just sort of place the yarn where it needs to go, and you can kind of use the surface of your work surface to brace the yarn and your hand and your hook and get a working cinch circle. So if you have trouble with the cinch circle because of how to hold it or where to put your hook, I recommend that video. It will clear all that up for you. And you can always make your magic rings against a flat surface. Sliding loops can be made against your lap or your table or whatever. So if you really want to use that technique because you've been told that there really aren't any good substitutes for it, then that video will help you figure out how to do it on a flat surface if holding it in midair is a problem. What are the pros and cons of the cinch circle? Well, you can make a center to something like the top of a hat or the beginning of a doily or even the beginning of a granny square and not have a hole in the middle, basically. That's really nice if you're making a hat. You don't really want a hole at the top of your hat. Maybe you don't want a hole opening up in the center of your granny square. You know, you want a either no hole or a very small hole or space at the center. And a cinch circle lets you do that. The other nice thing about a cinch circle is that it can be any size, it can accommodate any number of stitches and any number of sized stitches. So for example, you can use a cinch circle with single crochets, half double crochets, double crochets, treble crochets, extended stitches. You can work multiple kinds of stitches or patterns into that cinch circle. It really doesn't matter what you're putting in your first row. You can still cinch the whole thing shut or cinch it to a closure size that you like. Now a cinch circle works best if you have enough tail that you can weave that tail back and forth in on the back of your stitches so that it kind of locks that tail in place. One of the problems that people often talk about is that they've used the magic circle, but it's opened up on them, or it's unraveled on them, or because it's just one thin loop of yarn, depending on the size of your project, you're putting a lot of weight and strain on that single loop of yarn, so the yarn can break over time, and then all of a sudden you've got stitches scattering and the entire center of your work has opened up. That can be problematic. So I do have some substitutions that you can use in lieu of the cinch circle. And rather than explain this particular substitution every single time, going forward, if anybody says to me, is there something else I can use in lieu of the magic ring, I will say yes, and I will redirect you to this video. So without further ado, let's get into the 3 different substitution types you can use in lieu of a magic ring. The first one, and the one that you're probably all mostly familiar with, is a chained ring. So what do? You create a slip knot on your hook. You chain a number of chains. This is typically directed in the pattern. I like to use 5 for a granny square, for example. But the nice thing about the chained ring is that it can be adjusted. So the hole or the ring size that you're making can be adjusted by the number of chains you make. So you can make 3 chains for a very tiny little centered hole. You can make 5 chains that's big enough to work a bunch of larger stitches into, or however many stitches you need. You can also chain a lot and make a big circle for whatever work you're going to be doing. Let's say you're making a ponytail hat and you want a hole at the top of your hat. Well, maybe that's where you want to start, and you'll start with a larger chained ring. Maybe you're making a poncho and you need a neck hole. Well, then you would start with a larger chained ring. So a chained ring is basically just making a ring over which or into which you are working all of your stitches. What are the pros of the chained ring? Well, after you join your stitches with a slip knot and you have that nice sturdy ring, you can work any size stitch you want into it. So they can be single crochets, half double crochets, double crochets, trebles, etc. It can be a combination of stitches. Whatever your first row is can be worked into that ring. So that's a good thing. You can adjust the size by the number of chains you use, like I mentioned, and it's strong. So you are chaining a ring, which means it's not just one single loop of yarn, it's multiple little chains, and you're working over top of a whole series of chains, which makes it a stronger start to whatever your project is. What are some of the drawbacks or the cons? Well, it can be a little thicker because you are working stitches over top of a chained ring. It can be a little thicker. It isn't necessarily easily adjustable like a cinch circle is. You can cinch it shut. I'll talk about that in a moment, but it's adjustable only in the way that you chain the number of chains. So if it's too big, when you have to take everything out, start with fewer chains, begin the ring again, and then add your first row. If it's too small, you got to take everything out, add more chains, etc. So it's adjustable, but not as easily adjustable. And you will usually end up with a bit of a space. Depending on the kinds of stitches you're using or the size of stitches, it could also want to bubble up a little bit. But like I said, all of those things are adjustable. It's just going to take you more time, more trial and error. But it is a useful substitute for the cinch circle. Before I talk about cinching up an open space, which can be applied to each of these 3 substitutes, I'm going to talk about the next 2 substitutes first. The next substitute for a magic ring is working all of your stitches into the first chain. So for example, if you are working a circular single crochet first row, then you would chain 2. Into the first chain, you would work your entire first row. So what you're doing is you're just working all of your stitches into a chain, not a sliding loop. It works also for larger stitches like half double crochets, double crochets, treble crochets, etc. You just need to adjust the number of chains away from that first chain in order to get to a nice starting height. So like 2 chains, you would chain 3 for half double crochet, or 2. I guess half double crochets can be 1 or 2 chains tall. You would chain 2 or 3 for double crochet. You would chain 3 or 4 for treble crochet. You would still work all of your stitches into the first chain. The pros to this is that it's fast. It can use any height of stitch by adjusting the number of chains away from your first chain. And it's relatively thin, so you don't have a great big thick ring that you're crocheting into. The cons for doing all of your crochet of round 1 into the first chain is that it can really open up on you. You can get a bit of a hole going, which can be annoying. You would have to then consider cinching it shut, which I will talk about in a moment. Also, if you are working a smaller number of stitches, it's going to create a bunching effect. So let's say you're only putting in 3 or 5 stitches into that little chain and you join your row, it's going to bubble up on you. It's not adjustable. If you are working a lot of taller stitches, I would say that this method is best for a beginning row of 12 to 16 stitches in either half or double crochet. This one's good for starting rows of like 5 to 10 single crochet, but you're still going to get a bit of an opening happening because the strain on that first chain opens it up. And like I said, I have a solution for that. It's just more time intensive than the cinch circle, which is why I often prefer using the cinch circle. But you can work your first row into a single chain. The third substitute option is working all of your first row stitches into a single crochet. This is good because it's stronger than a chain. It's stronger than the cinch circle's loop, for example. You're actually kind of like the strength that you get from making a chained ring. You're working stitches over top of more loops. So you're working into an actual single crochet stitch. Basically, you chain 2 and you make a single crochet in the first chain from the hook. Ignore the chain that single crochet is sitting in. It's kind of like if you would, your first row was single crochet and then you would chain in a certain number of stitches and work back into it. Well, you are working all of your successive stitches into that single crochet, just like you would if you were working a flat piece, except that you're still working in a circle. Eventually, that first chain that your first single crochet is anchored in will disappear underneath all of your other stitches. This is stronger than a sliding loop. It's stronger than working into a chain because you're working around more loops. That single crochet is a little bit of a sturdier base, but it runs into the same problems that working into a chain gives you. So if you only have a few stitches in your first row, it's going to bubble up on you. It's going to like look like a cone shape. This does work well with different size stitches. So just like the single crochet into the chain or the double crochet or you can use any number of sized stitches after you chain away from that first stitch, the single crochet you made. You're using the single crochet as your anchor. But it works best just like working into the first chain. It works best on more stitches. So 12 to 16 double crochets if that's your first row, 5 to 10 single crochets if that's your first row. Cons are that it can still open up on you. It's less likely to break, but you still might loosen it up. You can cinch it shut. Again, I'm going to tell you how to do that in a moment, but it will possibly open up on you, and it's not really size adjustable, so it's really only good for a certain number of stitches. How do you cinch up these 3 options? So, unlike the magic circle, which is cinchable right on completion of your first row, you can technically cinch up any circle or space that opens up with the use of these 3 substitutions. You just have to think ahead. So you would start with a longer tail. You would make your slip knot further in on your working yarn. So start with a longer tail, and you can use any one of these options. You can use the cinch circles, I should say you can use the chained ring, you can use the work into a chain or work into a single crochet method. And then you leave that long tail out, don't work over top of it. Work your first row, join your first row, pause, pull up a long loop, and then flip it over, grab your yarn needle, weave that long tail all the way around underneath that first row of stitches, pull it tight, and then weave that yarn all the way back through the same stitches to lock it into place. And I would recommend doing that first one way, then the other, then the other. So do it 1, 2, 3 times. It's very unlikely that that tail is then going to come undone, and it will have shrunk the hole. This is great if you have fewer stitches in that first row and it wants to cone up on you. It will help to kind of tighten it up and make it lie a little flatter. It also gets rid of the hole. It's just a little more time intensive. It's one more tail you have to weave in, and that's why you can definitely use these 3 substitutes instead of the magic circle, but you just have to think ahead, especially if you want to make sure that if that hole opens up on you, you're going to have to cinch it shut. But that is doable, and that's why these 3 things can be used in lieu of the magic circle. That is the cinch circle, the magic ring, whatever you want to call it. And it's substitutions. Yes, there are other options for working in the round and getting all that started. It just depends on the project you're up to and maybe the kind of start, the sort of anchor for row 1 that you need. I hope you found this helpful, and if you like to start working in the round in a different fashion, or you have other tips and tricks for starting in the round, or even just making that cinch circle, please share in the comment section down below, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty above all, and we will see you soon. Bye, guys.
Hi, everybody. Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.